Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Stream of Consciousness. Today, we're going to be talking about something very interesting, which is called Horseshoe Theory. The idea here is that the political spectrum isn't just left to right, but in fact, it's a spectrum that goes and almost touches on itself on the far left and the far right. In fact, you'll find them using a lot of the same arguments, a lot of the same logic. They've just sort of settled on different issues, but with the same approach. Never has that been more true than with the merging of the anti-GMO and anti-vaccine movements. Before I get into this really interesting article here, the subject of which is going to be that there's really not that much difference between opposing genetically modified foods and opposing vaccines. In fact, it's a lot of the same people literally leading both movements in both cases, and a lot of the arguments are very, very similar. So before you start getting all defensive, let me just put it really clear here. It's already settled from the American Association for the Advancement of Science that GMOs pose no risk. This is the most premier scientific organization in America, possibly in the world. They're also the publishers of Science Magazine. They're incredible. Their board is like all Nobel laureates. So they're telling you that the consensus on GMO safety is firmer than for human-induced climate change. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going back and forth on the arguments in favor of GMOs. I'm just going to let you know that if you oppose them, in fact, the board of directors of the AAS has gone to oppose the labeling of genetically modified foods. They'll tell you that legally mandating such a label can only serve to mislead and falsely alarm consumers. They explain to you how all the arguments around frankenfoods and whatnot is ridiculous and misunderstood, about how this is a great leap forward. There's actually precedent for fighting these types of mandatory labeling. They did it with food irradiation. That used to be the safest method of getting rid of E. coli. We had it for the longest time. We had no problem until the same group, the Organic Growers Association, did a full force propaganda misinformation campaign against it, forced these logos on it. The same approach they're taking with GMOs. They're like, it was really the safest way of doing it. Now that we don't have it anymore, you get a couple hundred, sometimes over 1,000 people a year dying of E. coli. So that's not good. We could have avoided all of that. So anyway, this article, to get back to the article, it talks about how if you visit the website March Against Monsanto, you'll see a lot of the same people arguing against GMOs as you will against vaccines, and they'll use the same types of arguments. In fact, Bill Maher did this bit like 8 years ago or so that's just so full of all the misinformation arguments. He's got Rachel Maddow by his side to help him make them, and then Mark Ruffalo here, audience full of cheering people who all agree with him. But pretty much everything they repeat is going to be anti-scientific, and ironically the same thing you're hearing out of the anti-vaxxers right now. So let's just let it roll.
Okay, you're right. We should talk about genetically modified foods. America, corporations run the show. Even though 9 out of 10 Americans would like foods to at least be labeled to, at least we know they're frankenfoods.
Oof. Let's just leave it on a shot of Bill not knowing what the hell he's talking about. I'll give him credit. This was before the initiatives in Washington and California, with both went down in flames. Let's take a look at both of those. You got Washington Initiative 522 here in 2012. This one failed. It was about the labeling of genetically modified foods. We had another one here in California, Prop 37, also failed. So you can see right here. So he's telling you that 90% of people want this. Come on, can't even get 50% of Californians or Washingtonians to want that. Anyway, let's just let Bill keep going with the propaganda.
No. Shut up and eat your fucking mutant chili.
Duh. Look at this.
You have a public role here, which is to warn people. It's not a question just
What are you
consumers
warning
want
them of?
Of whatever it is involved in.
Whatever it is, that's it. Well, I gotta warn people. I'm just trying to put the information in their hands. I mean, this is misinformation. No matter how you feel about genetically modified foods, if you're against them, that's not a scientific position, okay? That's just hocus pocus. And these guys are pushing the same type of hocus pocus here that you'd hear from an anti-vacciner. Oh, we're just trying to put the information out there. We're just trying to let people make a choice. Ridiculous. And the frankenfoods thing is just embarrassing. Oh my God. I wonder if you could get a single qualified biologist to agree with that assessment of how they're like, oh, they're taking it from a fish and they're putting it in this, and that's totally different. And it's from a scientific perspective, it's not. It's just your hocus pocus. I'm sorry. And that's really hard to overcome, but that's why it's so hard for people to overcome anti-vaccine stuff. They believe the same thing with that. They're injecting viral DNA into people. And I took the vaccine. I've got no problem with it. I'm going with the science. But the point of this bit is that you can't have it both ways.
Well, here's something that didn't used to exist. They didn't used to take a gene out of a bacterium and put it in corn so that the corn grows its own insecticide.
Right. That's right.
Now we do that.
By the way,
That argument is really popular with people from just a biology perspective. It's absolutely ridiculous. The AAS specifically rejects it in their statement. As I said, the anti-vaccine people make the same argument. They'll just claim that this vaccine is different because it's an mRNA vaccine, that instead of your body reacting to weakened viral particles, this one is actually instructing your body to create proteins, which is novel and new. Not saying there's any reason to fear it. Want to be very clear, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've been vaccinated. But Rachel here is creating a scientific distinction that doesn't exist. She's being very smug about it. Like, when the science isn't on your side, you can't be this smug. It's hard to watch. Bill's show is specifically set up like this. I mean, I enjoy the show. It's funny. But, it's him and two people who agree with him, plus his whole audience. So it's really hard to cut through the facts that both of them are and their friend here are just spreading nonsensical misinformation in the same way you'd hear from an anti-vaxxer today.
Great argument for it. But if I want to make a decision about whether or not to ingest that genetically modified organism...
Whoa, which one are we talking about? Are we talking about the food? Or are we talking about genetically modified vaccines? Which, again, I have no problem with, but that's what it is. This is a genetically modified vaccine.
To convince me that it's safe.
Is she talking about the vaccine and GMOs? I'm just really getting lost with Rachel's argument here, what subject she's even on anymore.
And of course, Monsanto's latest frankenfood got speedy approval because
Just literally right out of the anti-vaccine playbook. I mean, this conspiracy theory. You can't trust the pharmaceutical companies. They got the thing approved real fast because they're on the board and the government's in on it. You can't trust the GMOs because, Monsanto's on the board and got the speedy approval. And it's all just conspiracy theories, man. Put up or shut up. He's not a scientist. He has zero science behind any of this. It's all just smoke and mirrors. It's all just fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Really kind of embarrassing because just how aggressive way he's doing it, yelling at people and stuff. It's like they didn't bother to get anyone in here who's an actual scientist to tell Bill that he has no idea what he's talking about.
If there is not a health risk, and there are not health risks
But there may
associated
be a health
wait.
There may be risks, say Bill. It's not a scientific position. There may be risks with the vaccine. So what? Who cares? Who cares what you think? You're a comedian. You're not a scientist.
There may be. There are not known health risks that are associated with GMOs.
Watch Bill just make an explicitly anti-vaxxer argument right here.
let's trust the corporations to put people's health above profit, because that's what they would do.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's what corporations normally do.
Oh my God, look at how smug they are. They're like, Bill, you nailed him. You nailed him, Bill. I hear the same stuff from people who oppose vaccines. They're like, oh, what? You trust the pharmaceutical companies? You trust the corporations? It's not about trust. I listen to the science. I look at the peer-reviewed evidence. I don't go with all this, oh, I did my own research, like Rachel and Bill here did. They did their own research on the exact same websites that are pushing all the anti-vaccine stuff. They're like, Joseph Mercola, go check him out. I mean, Scientific American wrote a whole blog post about how ridiculous Bill was and he made no sense. And it just, so you got to be careful with some of these things where they just set the thing up to be this, punching bag on this poor guy who's not even a scientist himself. So, either way, the point of this article, to get back to the beginning, was the horseshoe theory, the far left and the far right. You really see them touching sometimes. You could see Bill Maher and Rachel Maddow here acting like the furthest right anti-vaxxer you've ever met. And that was a great article here. Watch out for Robert Kennedy, Andrew Wakefield, all of these guys, just total hoaxsters. Don't repeat their arguments. If you have a strong feeling about this, go read the statement from the AAS Board of Directors and definitely enjoy those genetically modified foods. Ain't nothing wrong with them.